After that, it becomes a mystery because nobody knows exactly what happened to Sister Catherine.
Murders, mysteries, unexplained stories, and our family's crazy opinions on them all. Join us now. The Family School of Thought is in session.
Welcome, everybody. One more week to the Family School of Thought. It's a nice hot day here. I just got out of the pool, and I did put some clothes on before I got on the camera, so you guys can thank me later.
You're welcome.
How is the weather in Portland?
I don't know if you can hear my fan, but it's been warm. It's definitely not as warm as it has been. It's been around like 70s, 80s lately. Sunny.
Okay. All right. Jesse, how's the weather where you're at?
We're having network problems.
It is very, very cold.
Is it?
Yep. I had to break out my winter jacket today.
Dee, how's it on home?
Oh, it's like the picture. It's gorgeous. Beautiful, hot, nice, swimming pool water.
Wait, see, I'm in, and can you guys guess where I'm at?
Yeah, you're in Pictured Rocks.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very, very, very
water's
tip of
nice.
the UP.
It's like I was gonna say, like we all grew up in Michigan, and you know where things are.
Yeah.
Point on the map where.
I was gonna say y'all been here.
Yeah, hand.
All right.
Where is it on the
I'm
hand?
all like, oh,
Well,
all the bit. Jesse, why don't you get started with some facts of the week?
yeah, mental was amazing facts. So I have a couple. Both of them are doggy related. Doggish, I guess I should say. So, first one, if you have a daily routine, some scientists believe that dogs can tell when you're coming home by how much your scent has left the house by that time of day. To me, that makes sense because, you know, like at the end of the day, when you're coming home, your dog's usually sitting there waiting for you to get into the house. You know you're about to ride.
You know it's time you get home. Yeah, that's true. So they're saying the scent kind of
it just
all day long,
it fades throughout the day, so
they know.
Yeah, so they know based on how much of your scent is left in the house. So, I
thought you knew how to tell time.
What? It didn't.
I said I thought our dog just knew how to tell time.
Yeah, maybe. My second fact is in 2011, a 13-year-old Norwegian boy encountered a pack of wolves while he was walking home alone from school. He fended off the pack of wolves by removing his headphones and blasting the song "Overcome" by Creed at full volume. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Wow.
Not a super big
I'm
not a big super fan of Creed. Apparently wolves aren't either. So, you know, but there you go.
If you ever come in contact,
I'm sure this kid is a super fan of. I'm sure he's a super fan of Creed because it saved his life. But you know, and isn't Creed supposed to be like a Christian band, anyways? You know, so there you go. God was there with him. What? Not to be dramatic.
Okay.
Or
Cass, you got on for us this week. This is going to be a great show, I can say.
So I do have a song for us today. And again, it was one where I was reading a book, and I always listen to music while I read. And it came on, and this one I did know, but it's still like I forgot how weird and creepy this song is. So here we go.
we need
Seems like nothing ever comes to no good up on Choctaw Ridge.
Oh, I haven't heard this song in so long.
I know.
Right? Okay, I got an assignment for all three of us before we get started, Cass. Lucinda Williams. You know who she is? YouTuber. She has the best version of that song you ever heard. Lucinda Williams. Okay, I'm sorry, Cass. Go ahead.
Well, this is not Lucinda Williams. This is Bobby Gentry, and the song is "Ode to Billy Joe." And it is. I couldn't play a lot of the song that I really wanted to kind of get the whole song, but we really have a very short time. I'm allowed to not copyright. But it's a song about this. Basically, it's a first-person narrative of this family having dinner and basically talking about how a young man in the town committed suicide. And it's very cavalier, very nonchalant. Most of the song is, "Oh, can you pass this? Hey, will you grab that for me?" It's too bad about Billy Joe, though. We were just hanging out with him last week, kind of thing. And so it's very, they're just not really, the family is just not really getting the tragedy sense of what's going on. And that is what Bobby Gentry said the song is basically about, family, especially here in America, just not really being able to empathize with other people's tragedies. And she says this a lot about not being able to empathize, but also it's not based on the Emmett Till case, but she was very inspired by the Emmett Till case of how many people and many families and many white families here in America just couldn't really understand what was so tragic about the death of Emmett Till. And for those who don't know, Emmett Till was a young boy in 1955, a young black boy who was accused of flirting with a white woman. And so members of the town went to his house and lynched him and left him for dead. And it was a huge, huge tragedy, but so many people just couldn't really get behind it. And it's horrible, that a lot of people...
That is
and
horrible.
a lot of people...
Okay, I got.
Okay. But she really wanted to empathize, and that we as human beings aren't really able to see past our own tragedies, and so that's what this song is about. Now you may go, Dad.
I got a couple things. Of course, I had something to say about it. Excellent song. But Emmett Till, Rosa Parks, when she sat on the bus, she was mad about Emmett Till. That's what made her do that.
I know.
See, and I think that's something too that.
Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I didn't know that. I didn't know that until later in life, though. And what I was going to say is, I think that's something too that, especially my generation or other generations are starting to learn that what we learned in school as history, we didn't learn the real facts. We learned.
You only learn certain facts.
Half the facts, or
obviously the Emmett Till was a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
And what was really big about it was mother. They lived in Chicago, and he went and visited family in the South.
Yes.
That's where he got killed.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat him up so bad he wasn't even recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother insisted on having an open casket because she wanted the world to see what they did to him.
What that they did, yeah.
Well, they had it in the paper and everything, and that was what really sparked the the
civil rights movement,
the revolution there, and that's what made Rosa Parks say. She was just like, it was right after that when she said, "I'm not going to sit in the back of the bus."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then back to the song.
Mm-hmm.
This was a movie back in the day, and she and the narrator, and Billy Joe were having an affair.
Yes, that's in the song.
But it was like, they were like, you weren't supposed to do that, I guess, at the time. So
yes, they were
he killed himself. He killed himself rather than going forward and
not be with her. Yeah,
he killed her. He killed himself over her, and then her family never knew that.
Mm-hmm.
They just thought it was some kid in the holler somewhere that killed himself. Mm-hmm. He never had a lick of sense anyhow.
Mm-hmm. It's in the song, but that's
Okay.
at the end of the song.
Yeah.
I can't play
Okay.
the whole song. I wish I could, but I can't.
I know
All right.
that's why your dad said that. Didn't you see the smart?
It's a good song.
It is.
It is.
Yes.
It's a good song. It's one of my favorite. But go YouTube, listen to Williams. Okay. So, anything else, you guys? Before we get started?
Nope.
Dee, I know you got a hot topic for us this week.
No. But hey,
Probably
it is what it
gruesome
is.
murder. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you were reading my program.
I didn't look.
So, my thing on this week is on Sister Catherine Cesnik, and she was murdered. And to this day, it's still an unsolved mystery of who killed her, but everybody seems to know who did. But she was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1942, and she had a natural gift for teaching, and she was brought to God. You know, everybody, she had a calling for her to become a nun. So she became a nun, and she went to Baltimore at age 18 to join the School of Sistery of Notre Dame. Eventually going to teach at the Archbishop, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this. Is it Kioff High School?
Okay.
But she wasn't happy there, and this was part of the. As I go through the story, I think that's why she decided to leave that school, because she seen things going on that she was not happy with. But she left there, and in 1969, at age 26, moved out and took a job in Western High School. And then on the evening of November 7th, 1969, Catherine left her apartment, heading, after she got her job at Western. She left her apartment, heading to the Edmondson Village Shopping Center around 7:30 p.m. to buy an engagement gift for her sister, and then just run a few errands, like she always did on a Friday night. She first stopped to cash her check, which was, $255 back then. And that seemed to be the routine thing for her and her roommate and some of the other nuns that she hung with. But her roommate stayed home, and she went out and did all these things. And that night, she stopped at the bakery company and bought some Danish, and then went on to pick up a gift for her sister's engagement. And then after that, it becomes a mystery, because nobody knows exactly what happened to Sister Catherine. The next morning, her roommate became alarmed because she never showed back up at home. And so she called a few friends, which was Reverend McCann, and then another Reverend, Gerald J. Cobb. And they discussed it, and decided that they were going to call the police and report that she was missing. The news of her disappearance shook a lot of people, because she was very well liked and by everybody, and thought of as the finest teacher that there was. There was lots of girls that looked up to Catherine, and she was also known for her compassion by all of her students, which benefited from her. And they were always engaging. She was always engaging with her students, writing musicals for them to perform on stage. or inventing games just to encourage them to teach each other new vocabularies and other things that they needed to go on. And the first clue of her disappearance was found pretty early, which was her car ended up being, because it was parked illegally right in front of her apartment, or right by her apartment. And the car was found unlocked around 4:40 a.m. the next day after her appearance. And her 1970 Maverick was parked, like I said, illegally. And the neighbors said that they had noticed that car parked there since 10:30 that evening of her disappearance, when she went out shopping and did all of her stuff. And the bakery that she had purchased was still sitting in the front seat, along with some leaves and twigs and a few branches. Her car was, I guess, quite a mess. And then on her antenna of the car were more twigs, and the car was on the left signal of the steering wheel. Pieces of yellow thread was caught on a twig, and it was in the car, and the car was caked with mud. So whether she drove it, which probably not, there was no signs of any kind of struggle, so it made no sense that she would probably cover. It made no sense for any of this, because she had no struggles or whatsoever. So they think that she was coerced by somebody that she knew out of the car, and then they took her to the area that, and if you go on the Wikipedia, it has pictures of where her body was found, and it kind of shows where all the twigs, and you can see where all that stuff makes sense after her car was found. But her body was never found at that time. And then 2 months later, on January 3rd in 1970, her body was found by a hunter and his son in a garbage dump in Lansum, Midland, just outside of Baltimore. And it was covered in snow and partially hidden by a nearby embankment. And the exact area couldn't be reached by a car, meaning that she would have had to been forced to walk there, or possibly carried. And then when they resumed her body, they found that there were choke marks on her neck, and there was a quarter-size hole in the back of her head and on her skull, which pointed to her actual cause of death was a blunt force and trauma leading to the skull fracture and a brain hemorrhage. So the weapon, of course, is still a mystery as of today. Still no evidence of who killed her or why she was killed. I mean, they got information why she was killed, or I'm getting to that. The initial person of interest, the police kind of went after this Gerald Cobb, and he had been dating Catherine at the time of her disappearance. And he had, before she had taken an oath to become a nun, he had asked her to marry him, but she had said no. And
But they were still dating?
But that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
They were still dating when she was a nun?
No, she wasn't before.
So were they still
Before
dating
she
when she
took that
died,
oath.
when she was a nun?
She died when she was a nun, but
Right.
apparently they were dating and seeing each other, but she had told him no, she couldn't marry him because she had become a nun. She wanted to become a nun.
Right. Right.
And she was teaching at that other school, at the Western, she was teaching at the school, and he was a priest at one of the schools. And he had told her that he would give up his priesthood if she would marry him. And she said no. And they continued to be friends and spend time with each other, and they wrote love letters back and forth before she disappeared. But he called and said
Got a
that he still
secret
was,
romance going on. He's a priest,
That's what I was thinking too.
yeah.
and they had a secret romance.
It didn't say that. It just says that they had a relationship, and
Just that.
he called her the night before she disappeared. Called her and said that he was still in love with her, and that he would leave his position as a priest if she would only marry him and agree. And she would agree. But she said no, she couldn't do it. And so that was why he was one of the main suspects of the crime. Suspect. But he had an alibi. He was with a bunch of other priests. And later, after he was a priest, he had later became a Methodist minister. So he left the priesthood and became a minister. But the night that Catherine's disappearance, he was at the movies with another priest, so he had an alibi. So the police still didn't believe his story, but the church forced him to stop searching, and his name was Detective Nick Gangras. I can't. It's Giangrasso. Grasso. Still thought that it was somebody tied to the church that did this. So he kept on going, and he began to look into Father Joseph, because all the interviews that he had done, going to different people and talking to other people for interviews, his name continuously came up. And so the detective came up with that he worked with Catherine, found out that Joseph McCall worked with Catherine at the first school, which was it was a Catholic school, or the Church of Caw. It was, what did I say? The priest. It was named a different name, and then they
Bishop
later
Caw
on, I think they
High
changed it. Right. Yeah, that's what it was. Then it became later it became known as a Sexton Cone High School. So they left out the Archbishop afterwards. But Catherine, that he had worked with Catherine and at the first school, which is now known as the Sexton Cone High School. But in the investigation, didn't get to go very far because Father Mescal was always too busy to talk. And like all Catholic priests, and anytime you're interviewing a priest, the higher bishop and higher up people really put a kibosh to it. They said that they didn't want it seemed outwardly that the letters were wrong with him, and that he was trusted, or he was of interest, but people became outwardly upset because they thought that he was being wronged. McCall was, because he was trusted by all the people. And in his late 20s, he was described as a pretty charismatic what am I trying? Yes, charismatic person.
Charismatic.
And charismatic. And then he was very well liked by all the people that in the church. And he became friends with all the families of the students. And so you weren't allowed to talk about sex, you weren't allowed to do any of this stuff. So he had the parents right where he wanted them. And he worked as a counselor with a psychology degree from Johns Hopkins. And many of the parents in the area would attend regular mass. And like I said, they became very friendly with him. And he became friends with all of these parents and had their children baptized by him. And then and when those kids got older, he would give them rides home and to their appointments, wherever they needed to go. And he was a very charming, and he put on a big cascade and shattered in 1992. It was shattered because
He's molesting all those kids.
He was molesting all of these children that these parents had trusted him with. He was picking them up at their home, and he befriended everybody. I mean, he just became.
I bet the Catholic Church was all over that.
Well, they hid a lot of this.
But they didn't let it happen again.
No, never.
Very common story. Very common story.
And it continues to happen over and over, this is really a very upsetting story, because you see all of this and it happened right here in our community. But it's in 1992, two of the women.
Yeah. And story, and usually the community is backing this person the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Refusing to accept that this happened. Yeah.
Right. But and the sad thing is none of these children and none of these students that he was doing this to came forward. And in 1992,
a lot of
which
people
is 20
that
years
are
late, came
but
forward.
a lot of people that are assaulted don't come forward for fear of not being believed, which we see happening today, or a fear of, hey, don't tell. And this is a prominent person in their church and in their community that, I'm going to tell my parents, hey, this person's sexually assaulting me. And the parents are going to say, oh, it's Reverend, what's his name?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and usually they think they're the only one that is being abused, and it's really, multiple.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm getting to all of this because it's so overwhelming. But the two women were anonymous at the time that came forward, but later they came forward, and the reason that they ended up coming forward because they had blocked it out for 2 decades out of their minds that this did not happen to them, because they just couldn't believe it. Well, then all of these allegations, Jean Warner and Teresa Lancaster came out with their allegations and said that of the abuse from Father Mescal assaulting them, and they they were students of Pastor or Father Mascal's back at the Archbishop when it was the Archbishop, known as that school. But then later was changed. And I think that probably was changed because of the fact that maybe all this stuff went on. I don't know. It doesn't say why it was later known as the Saxton. But it didn't take long for him to lose his position as a pastor because all the allegations, everybody started coming forward and accusing the pastor. But he spent time in the psychiatric hospital, but was found perfectly fine and was reassigned to another church, just like it has always been for decades. These
Right.
priests get caught up and they get caught and then they send them away and then they get reassigned to new churches. And it continues in other churches without anybody knowing. And so there's more abuse.
Yeah. This was back in the 70s, 80s when the person that was assaulted was the person that was blamed for it. Because what were you wearing?
Right,
what were you
right.
doing?
But then in 1994, over a dozen women came forward with allegations of abuse, and some that were able to fend off Father McCall told stories of him trying to abuse them. These stories of the women that were told were so awful that it's unbelievable that he got away with what he did. But he always targeted students that were struggling academically or struggling in home situations. Calling them into his right. And he called them into therapy where he used his charm and manipulation for them into believing that he knew what was best for them. And then he involved them in stripping them and taking off their clothes and touching them in ungodly manners, and then forcing them to pose nude photos while he and the school director watched with well-interest pleasure.
So there's another person involved.
So there was multiple people involved, including higher up police officers. And he posed the girls and let the police officers molest these little girls too. And that's pretty sad.
Wow.
But that Teresa Warner also said that he would take them into a gynecologist, and his name was Dr. Christian Richer, for checkups. And occasionally he would assault them on the table where they were being examined.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you saying that the parents allowed him to take them to the
no. The parents didn't know because the mere fact that he had told the kids that he would tell them that so he threatened these girls, but the parents didn't know. They thought that he was just taking them to their therapy or where they needed to go. The Father Mascal would pick them up, talk to the parents, and then take them and abuse them. And the parents had no idea what was going on. And none of these poor kids come forward. But then the doctor would later deny being a part of any of this abuse. So I don't know if after the doctor examined them, and he left the room and said, "You can get dressed," that the pastor would abuse them right there in that office. I mean, it's just pathetic. And it was apparently a fixation in the father. And of course, everybody said that it was an fix. And who would believe that he would perform anything like that in his own mock exam of the girls, flaunting his authority and power. And then he also told these girls that if they went forward, oh, and then another part of it was some of these girls that had come forward, this is all these girls coming forward in 1994, saying that this is what happened. These were such awful things that these girls are describing that this pastor did, this father did to them. And that he would flaunt his authority and power. And he would sometimes, the girls said that they felt like they were drugged during all of these events. So he had drugged them and then performed all of these things with these girls. And then he would share them with his friends, which were reportedly uniformed police officers. Isn't that sad that you're taught that you're supposed to go to the police for anything?
Yeah.
And
Did
the
any
details.
of the girls? Did any of the girls that came forward? Did any of them say that he threatened to, like, he showed them the pictures of what they were doing? They were naked and said, if you go tell anybody, I'm gonna expose you for, like the horror you are, kind of thing. Because that's how it happened with the Playboy bunnies and stuff like that. That was exactly all the girlfriends.
That's exactly. He told them that. He told them and threatened them that he would go to their parents. Did not talk about sex. Didn't do anything, and the parents would never allow him to talk about sex. So he threatened all of these girls that he would go to them and say that they were whoring around.
Right.
So yes,
and he got the control over them for them not to tell anybody.
Right. And then when all this stuff was going on, see, Sister Catherine was always in the picture, but I think I lost my spots.
Well, where she wasn't involved with it, she was threatening to expose it.
Yes. And see, that's why I think that she left the bishop
At school.
Yeah, the school, and then went to Western because she knew she was not happy there, and she knew that this was going on. And she literally went to the girls. She would bring the girls and tell them that they could come to her, and she was kind of their savior and to all of his victims. And she would ask them, she always opened her apartment, told the girls they could come over anytime they needed to. If they needed anything to talk to about, she would listen. And while she worked for she definitely had some idea of what the Father Mescal was doing. And when he called one of his students in for therapy, she would she did what she could so that he couldn't get those girls into his office. So he tried to she tried to help keep these girls from getting sexually abused. And I think he caught on to it. And she would spin the story and make excuses and tell Father Mikel that they were studying or otherwise occupied by something that they couldn't get away from. And Catherine took Jean Warner aside one time and asked her if the priests were hurting her. And Jean nodded in reply to Catherine, and Catherine promised her that she would do everything she could to take care of the matter. Well, Mescal did continue to abuse all the other students, and after Catherine left her job, she made her house a safe place, and invited the girls back to her apartment and tried to make the situation with Marcel and try to get things together. But the night that she was talking to her about Mescal, this Jean Werner went to Catherine's apartment the night before she disappeared and was talking to her about being abused by Father Mikel. And Father Mikel burst into Catherine's apartment, and the girl that came to her disappeared on her own and left without saying a word. She just left. And so what went on between Catherine and Father Mikel is unknown. But then Catherine disappeared the night after that. Father Mikel burst into her apartment when she was counseling a young lady. And Mescal knew what was going on. So Mescal had threatened the girls not to talk. And they had threatened, like I said, to one of the girls threatened by him. One of the girls had reported that Mikel had threatened them and put a gun in her mouth. And then Jean said that he had put a gun to her head and literally actually pulled the trigger, but come to find out the gun was not loaded. And he told her that no one would believe her or any of the other girls because he had a fancy degree from Johns Hopkins, and that he also told them he would tell their fathers that they were whoring around. And the most terrifying thing was he invited Jean to his car only to take her to where Catherine's dead body laid and was discovered later. And then he warned Jean, see what happens when you say bad things about people? And that scared Jean Lancaster, the other girl, into silence for decades. So it was easy to believe or assume that the motive for the murder lay somewhere in the area because Catherine fought actively against Joseph Mescal abuse against all of these girls. And Jean suspected that Catherine's planned on going to the police and exposing Mescal, and that's why Mescal burst into her apartment the night before. And either the cops were involved with Mescal because they were ones that were also abusing these young girls, and the bishop protected Mescal and told the police that when the investigator kept opening this case, he kept shutting the bishop kept shutting them down and said, you have no reason, you don't want to know, so shut it down. So it's information you don't want to know. And so they kept shutting it down. And so the other theory is that Catherine's murder wasn't the only incident. So after they found Catherine's body and all the stuff that went on, and then when investigator kept opening the case, they found out that hers wasn't the only incident, that there were actually 6 different murders that might be connected with each of the 3 of Catherine's murder. And there were 3 teenage girls, a teenage boy, and Catherine and Joyce Mikel all took place in the late 1960s, early 70s in the Baltimore area, with all the same physical, charismatic, same. Everything was kind of the same. The blunt force to the head. They were, their bodies were disclosed in a wooded area. Kind of all the same. So they were all, and all of them were connected somehow to Father Joseph McCall, either with working with him or attending the churches where he was a priest. Joyce McCall's body was found near Fort Meade, where Mescal was a military chaplain. And she was, I think, probably one of the first ones before Catherine got murdered, because this was, when he was a chaplain, or maybe later, it didn't say. But also, all of the murders were between 1960 and 1970. It didn't tell me the dates or years. It just says they were all kind of the same. So I don't know if in the documentary they had more information. And then all 6 murders are still to this day unsolved, along with Catherine. So nobody knows what happened to any of these people.
Is he still alive?
No, and then the case against Mescal. Hold on. The case against Joseph McCall in 1990 was actually didn't last, because it was thrown out because the victims had to come forward within 3 years of being sexually abused, and not 2 decades. But the women that came forward, like I said, had finally clicked in, and it come to them that they were sexually abused. So they had went to therapy their whole life, trying to come up with why they, what was wrong with them. And then with all these other people, the 10 people in 1970 that came, or 1994 that came forward, it finally clicked. And so it was thrown out because it was too many years.
The statute of limitations
They
had run. It's similar to
Exactly,
the Larry.
exactly.
It's similar to
And,
like the Larry
a great-
Nassar one too.
Exactly. Yep. All of the ones that were decades old, they still got their say, but
Yeah.
because it was so long, they didn't do anything. But a grave digger, eventually, when all of this come out, and he was interviewed by the detective, had told the police that Joseph had ordered him to dig a hole in 1991 to bury all these files. When they located the stash, they found nude pictures of underage girls, and they didn't have enough evidence to arrest Mescal. But the evidence, when they finally got all of the evidence, it vanished. It came up missing. So they never had anything to take to court to prosecute Father Mescal. And then, of course, Father Mescal died in 2001, having never been charged a thing for all of the sexual abuses that he had done in all of the years that he had been a priest. Over all of the years, the homicide detective looking into the cases were shut down to protect the higher ups. So the bishop had shut down all of the detectives, anybody that would open this case to try to find out what was going on. And later, the detectives made them resume Father Mescal's body to see about DNA. And they couldn't prove anything that on Catherine's gravesite, they couldn't find any DNA that linked Pastor McCall to it. So he got off scot-free. And then anybody that was still any of the detectives that were still trying to find out any information, they were forced into early retirement. And the new murders and further was unearthed information, and he wasn't supposed to. They said that it was unearthed information, and they weren't supposed to know. And that's how it was. That's how it ended. Was any of the detectives that come up with it, it was shut down and said that the information shouldn't be out. So they were protecting the police and any of the other priests that were involved in this case. And it's sad. Any questions?
Very sad.
It's sad.
And, you know,
It's sad, but it's also
It is.
still happening.
Still happening.
Things
Still
are constantly
happening.
being
Right.
happening. And it's
Yeah. and we need to
It's just-
stop this because
It-
we need to teach our girls and our young boys.
It's not just
Yeah,
girls.
that's what I
Yeah.
say. That
Yeah.
anybody, young boys, young girls, about their bodies, that no one is allowed to touch them, and don't believe anything anybody threatens them, because they need to know that they could come to you for anything and they are not going to be in trouble, that it's not their fault, that they can come to you, any parent, anybody, and we can take care of this matter. And if I was a parent and any of my children were abused and I found out, I would
Well,
not
you
stop
just have
until
to think too.
I would not stop until they were care of.
Statistically, but
If I had books.
statistically, in the United States of America, 1 in 4 women are sexually
Yes.
assaulted.
And isn't that sad? Why?
1 in 4.
Why? And how?
It is sad. And
Yeah.
that's something that, like, during my college orientation, that was a discussion. Like, hey, keep yourself safe, because look around, 1 in 4 of you will be sexually assaulted. It wasn't like, hey, let's try to prevent this. It's
Right.
This is going to happen. You got to
Right.
deal with it.
well, that's
On the other hand, 1 in 33 men are sexually assaulted. So, I mean, that's a huge difference. 1 in 4 compared to 1 in 33.
That's a huge difference.
We
I mean,
should
it
not
shouldn't
be
have
like
to
that.
worry about being sexually assaulted in anything that we do.
Mhm.
And we need to get
but
our
it,
government on board with this, and our senators, and
Well, the,
anything
No.
that
but
people are going to be held accountable
Instead-
for what's
yeah.
going on.
Well,
yeah,
look what's
look
going on right now.
but it's
I
also
know.
it's look at how we deal with the situation now as is. Me, just like Jesse said, I went to the same seminar. It's a little in your or like orientation of going to the college we went to. You have to go sit in this, but it's not everybody. It's just the females have to go and sit through this seminar
Right,
and
exactly.
say,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, this will happen to you
Yes.
if there's a room of 300 girls. 1 in 4 of you is going to get sexually assaulted. We can't really do anything about it. Just so you know, this is how you protect yourself." Instead of having a seminar where it's, "Hey, we're not going to sexually assault people, anybody.
Right.
We're not going to."
It goes
You're
down
literally
to
telling the
it's
girls
all
that
a
it's
misogynistic
you have to
teaching.
solve the problem yourself.
Yeah.
It's your fault if you are not in a group higher than 4. It's your fault if you go home alone.
Right.
It's so, and it's
Yeah.
about, it's all this, like, it's trying to prevent a situation, but it's basically telling the girls, you have to prevent the situation yourself instead of dealing with the
Right.
problem.
The men and boys cannot be
Yes.
controlled, so you have
Yes.
to be the person that
But
prevents it.
and then
So
if
it's
you
boys just
turned
being
around and carried a
boys.
gun and shot
is
that
that?
person, you'd go to prison. So you're protecting yourself.
Yes, you would.
Why should because you're
Right,
protecting
exactly.
yourself so that you don't get assaulted by this idiot that thinks that he can just take over your body
Because
and do
we-
whatever he pleases to it.
Because we live in a misogynistic world.
The patriarchy.
I mean, that's what
Exactly.
it comes
And
down.
we need to
Yeah.
like I said, we need to get everybody
All
that is supposed to be protecting us on board, that this should not be going on. And that someday maybe it will happen to their child, and then they'll turn it around.
Well,
That's
I think the
when it
problem
happens
too
to
is a lot
them.
of the people that believe. No, I think a lot of people in those situations too, if they believe in certain beliefs, they still blame the victim, and then they disown that victim from their family.
I know, but that's
Because
sad.
it doesn't. It is sad, but you have people that are like that, and the sad thing is, we live in the 21st century. It's 2022, but you look at the that oh shoot, now I forget, the Jessup Mormons. You know, this stay sweet, or what is it? Stay sweet, pray and obey. But that's the world that most men want to live in. Is women,
Yeah.
you stay quiet and you do exactly what I tell you to do. And we are now, women are fighting back. We have been fighting back for generations, but we're fighting louder and harder than we have in the past. But this is, history repeats itself. Look at what's happening in the world right now.
Yes.
This happened 50 years ago, and we're still
Yeah.
dealing with it.
And we're still dealing
So-
with it because
and
of
that's the thing
certain
with
people that people have voted in to our Congress, and people that should not
But it's
be.
not just
They're not
it's not just the
protecting us.
government though too. It's not just the government too. It's in the church and in the
Yes.
religious
Yes,
sanctions too.
it's everywhere.
That you have these people that are high up that people worship and believe are God and speaking God's word. And guess what? The devil lives in the church.
Yes.
Yes,
And people need to realize that.
right. And that
And-
anybody
and
that's
that's
trying to control you
The devil
is
is
not what God wants.
it's the wolf in
Yeah.
sheep's clothing.
Yes.
And it says it in the Bible. It's all there. It's just, and that's something too. I was muted and out of the room when you were talking about it, but with the Catholic especially, whatever the priest and the pastor said, you took it by
Right.
that word. You didn't
Mhm.
read the Bible.
Yeah.
You didn't
No.
do the study and the research on your own. You were told exactly what to think and how to think it. And I think that's something too with this, like these little girls or the young students that he was molesting, because if it's all girls or some boys or whatever, but you're told that, he's doing this to you, but you're dirty. You're the one that
Right.
sinned. You're the one
Right.
that is tarnished from this. And especially back in the 60s, 70s, that was a bigger, that was what it was. The women were the ones that were faulted.
And I think that women they're getting smarter, and they're teaching their kids, you don't have to put up with anything. You are your
Right.
own person, and you need to protect yourself, and you need to.
There is no
And
is a
I
full
think that that's
sentence,
where
and
it come
people
out.
need to
No.
realize that.
No is a full sentence. Yes.
Yes, yes. So
You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to, and that kind of sounds like with the one guy that she was like having an affair with, if it was platonic or otherwise, it seems that maybe he didn't take no gently, and because maybe he's the person that is really involved, or who knows, but or even with this pastor.
well, it doesn't say
Mascal,
anything. It
but the
doesn't
thing
say
is,
anything more about.
if the police were involved with it or any of that and stuff, just because his DNA isn't there or wasn't there, doesn't mean that he didn't say something to one of the police officers in the town,
Right.
like, hey, Sister Catherine is onto us and she's going to come forward and speak it. And then a police officer is the one that actually killed her. And then because they're a police
Right.
officer, they know how to cover up. They know what to do, even back in those days. So,
Exactly.
maybe
Well,
they didn't
and
know
that's what
about
I'm saying,
DNA so
it
much, but if they, if they were the lead investigator on this case, they knew exactly what to do to point in a different direction than what needed to be pointed in. They could point south instead of pointing
That's what I'm
north.
saying. It wasn't just the priest that was involved in this. It was the whole community. It was the police and the chiefs and, people that were higher up. They were all involved in this. So it would have taken
Right.
down the whole city. So
Mhm.
and that's
Right,
what
and
that's what needs
that's kinda-
that's what needs to happen is people that are abused, and
Yeah.
in cases like this, they need to take down the whole city. They need to fight that whole city, and they need to get everybody
Everybody that's
accountable.
involved, everybody that's accountable should be held accountable.
Right.
But
They're protected.
that's something,
But,
you know.
and we need.
But when you're a 14-year-old girl in a town,
Yeah.
you know, like
Well,
like
that's what
you're
I'm
scared
saying.
to tell
These
your
parents
parents,
need
let
to start-
alone anybody else about it. And then if the
These
police
parents
are
need to
involved,
start fighting
Right.
for
Yeah.
their children.
Yeah.
We need to start fighting for
Right.
our children, making
Well,
these people accountable.
yeah,
It's about not letting yourself be ignorant
Yes,
of
right.
problems. You know, that's
Right,
what's happening
right.
today in today's society is they're trying to basically make the Americans ignorant of problems. They're, you know, they don't want us to
Right.
know. They don't want their children to know about sexual education. They don't want
Right.
them to know about the correct history of America,
No.
because they
wanna
want
take all of that out of
you to
schools.
be ignorant,
Yeah.
so that you don't know when a bad thing is
Yeah.
happening.
Right.
That is why they don't want
Right.
they don't want critical race theory.
Right.
They don't want
Right.
sexual education. They don't want anything outside of what they believe in, because if you don't know any better, you don't know what's wrong and what's
Right.
right.
It is getting late. Anything else we want to discuss about the topic?
Well, you know,
Sister Christine.
Any questions you guys had, or any final
We
thoughts
we
there?
need to
I-
start.
I'm
counting
definitely
more
under the
people
impression
accountable.
that
I was
the cops did it. I think they
I
were
think
involved,
that's
and
kinda
the
where I am.
pastor went to them and said, "She's
Well,
going
I think the
she's gonna
talk.
talk.
We
I
need to
think
figure
the
this out."
pastor. I think the pastor did it, and he threatened the cops that were
Or-
all involved in it, and they covered it all.
Or
They
there
covered
was
it
more
up for
than-
everybody.
There was more than one killer. There was more than one person involved with the
Yeah.
killing.
They
So it could have been the
probably
pastor
yeah.
in the
Old
cops.
Boys Club.
But I want to just put it out there. Netflix does have a documentary. It's a 7-part documentary on this topic. It's called The Keepers. It was
Yes.
released in 2017,
I
so
meant
it's
to tell-
been like 5 years.
I meant
Yeah.
to tell
So
you that.
it does feature interviews with the women who were students at the school that were some say they were sexually abused by Mescal and the others. So that is a documentary series that if you're interested in this topic to watch on Netflix.
Yes, and that was the one that I was watching, was The Keepers. But
Yeah.
I run out of time, and I didn't have a weekend free to watch the whole
There is
episodes.
so
Okay.
I'm looking at references. There's something, it looks like a Huffington Post article. Buried in Baltimore, colon rather, a mysterious murder of a nun who knew too much. So it kind of sounds
Yes,
like
that's
that's
what it
what
sounds-
people think she was murdered, because she knew too much and was going to talk.
She was
Right.
coming forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what the Wikipedia. That's what I was working on. And they referred in quite a few of my statements that I had said.
Yeah.
It was
Mhm.
from this Huffington Post. And remember, all people that are watching, be educated.
The
Get
self-
educated, and
Educate yourself.
research and educate yourself.
Yes.
Do your research.
And I think what you said before, Mom, don't trust what anybody says about guilt. You know, if you want to
Yeah.
come forward, come
and teach your
forward.
children to
But
come
they're
forward
telling
no
you
matter what.
they're telling you that to manipulate you into feeling guilty,
Mhm.
and you are not the guilty party.
Yeah.
You need to come forward.
And if the person
and
that you
say
come
what
if
happens.
the person that you come
And
forward
not
to
only are you
doesn't
saving
believe you,
yourself,
Go to somebody else.
just
Not
go to the
Yes,
next
go to the
person.
next
not
person.
not only are you protecting yourself, you're protecting anybody that will come into the hands of that person that's committing these crimes. So
And
Yes.
usually it takes the first person to make the
Yeah.
flow of other people come forward as
Yeah.
well. So
And-
just because
and
it's
I
happening
think
to
our-
you doesn't mean that you're the sole
and
person.
all these young girls with NASA, or, all of these people that are coming forward,
Larry Nassar.
right? I think that really helped our young generation, because I'm hoping that all parents made their children watch that to realize that this should never have happened. So,
Well, and I know
Especially-
a lot of people did not like the Me Too movement, but I think it helped
yes, I do
tremendously
too.
with
I think so too.
people coming forward
Yeah.
because it showed that no matter who you are, if you are an Olympic gymnast coach, a huge movie producer, a family comedian, you are not held higher than the law, and you are not held higher.
I think it
accountability.
also helped in another way. It helped to make people realize victims are not just nobodies. They are gold medal gymnasts. They are, news anchors that you see every day. They are people that are prominent in our country, and that's or the person that you've known your entire life that was part of that kind of thing. Because that's something too with the Larry Nassar one. That was a huge thing in Michigan, and we had several people that we know personally that were part of that gym that he worked at.
Yes.
So that's something that we know the people that were assaulted from this huge worldwide known case.
And
So
it's
it
sad
hits
that they
home.
couldn't have come forward
Right. It hits home,
before.
but it's also something that, it's shared with 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted, 1 in 33 men are sexually assaulted. And that's
Educate,
why
educate, educate.
that statistic is based on men and women. I don't know if children are included in that number or not. So that could be
Right.
worse. Who knows?
Yeah.
So
Educate.
don't be afraid to come forward.
No.
Thank you.
Advocate for yourself.
And advocate for others.
Advocate. And not
And
only
for
for
others,
yourself, but advocate for everybody.
Yeah.
And have empathy for all people, all humans.
Yes.
So,
Everybody's got their own tragedy. You have to pay attention. You have to be empathetic.
and that goes with abuse. Don't allow a spousal or anybody to abuse you, no matter what abuse it is.
Physical, sexual, verbal, mental,
emotional. Yes.
Emotional.
Yes. Come forward. Have that person be accountable for what they're doing wrong.
Okay,
Yes.
guys.
That was a good.
Please,
Good
everybody, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Contact us at the Family School of Thought at
Give us some
gmail.com.
suggestions.
Give us your suggestions.
Yeah, give us some.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Again,
Good
I
night.
appreciate you stopping in, and please let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you next week.